Buzz. After what seemed both like 1 second and like countless years, there was an almost inaudible buzz. As Wang Chong and the Arab high priest looked on, the eyelids of the head on the stone table trembled and began to slowly open. Time seemed to stop. In the end, this moment has still come. With a deep sigh, the head opened its mouth, its eyes tinged with an indescribable sense of age and experience. In this gloomy stone chamber was a bodiless head, an indescribably bizarre sight, and even more bizarre than that was that this bodiless head could speak. But both Wang Chong and the Arab high priest were unsurprised. At their level of cultivation, they had comprehended the essence of the world, and they could do what appeared mythical or absurd in the eyes of common people. Senior, this junior came late. As Wang Chong looked at the Sin the high priest, or perhaps one should call him Origin Supreme, he lowered his head and bowed, a hint of dejection in his eyes. The Sin the high priest did not have much time left. Wang Chong knew that this would probably be their final conversation. Life and death are decided by fate, and besides, this old monk has already lived for more than 10,000 years. Far more than an ordinary person. I have no regrets. All things thrive just as they must decline. Your Highness, there is no need to feel sorrow for this old monk. Origin Supreme's face was calm, his eyes exuding a calm aura that had seen through all things. And compared to this old monk's death, there is an even more important matter, and it is why this old monk called for you on his deathbed. Origin Supreme's expression turned grave. Wang Chong's heart thumped as he focused. Heaven is about to emerge, Origin Supreme sternly said. Bang! Origin Supreme's simple sentence instantly stirred up a storm in Wang Chong's mind. What? Anyone who had some understanding of the Celestial God Organization would understand what Origin Supreme's words meant. Up until now, Heaven was the sole person on the continent who could be confirmed to have reached the divine martial realm, and he was the only person who could call himself a god. Not even the sage emperor had reached this level. Wang Chong had been able to suppress the Celestial God Organization, even kill Genesis Supreme, because Heaven's body was in a sealed state. If Heaven broke free of his seal and emerged into the world, everything would change. For this world, it would probably be the apocalypse. Wang Chong glanced at the Arab high priest, whose calm expression indicated that he already knew. But there is no need for you to worry at the moment. Things have not gotten that bad. However, Heaven dispatched Essence Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Radiance Supreme to take a certain insignia from me. Insignia? Wang Chong repeated, frowning. This is it. At this time, the Arab high priest extended a hand, and bright stellar energy gushed out of his palm and transformed into a projection of a palm-sized, round insignia. The insignia was black and gold, and in the center was the depiction of lava and flames. A doomsday insignia, Wang Chong blurted out, his body trembling in shock. How is this possible? Wang Chong was no stranger to the doomsday insignias, but from what he knew, they were used to open the gate between worlds, allowing the otherworldly invaders to enter on a large scale. How could they be connected to Heaven's escape? You know of it? It was the turn of the Arab high priest and Origin Supreme to be surprised, both of them looking at Wang Chong. To their knowledge, Wang Chong should have never seen this object before. It's a long story. Senior, what are these insignias? Why are they linked to the imprisoned Heaven? Also, who was it that sealed Heaven? What is the Celestial God Organization? Wang Chong sternly said, asking several questions at once. Even if you didn't ask these things, I would have told you. Origin Supreme was not too perturbed, apparently anticipating these questions from Wang Chong. After experiencing this purification plan, I presume you know that human civilization has not always been the same. After a certain interval, everything will be destroyed. It was not the world sealed in ice that you have seen, but the complete destruction of the world. At that stage, all of human civilization will return to zero, and new civilization will emerge from the ruins. This sort of cycle of birth and decline you can consider an end, but to us it is an epic. These insignias, what you call doomsday insignias, are foundational objects left after the world has collapsed. They contained the laws and foundations of the world, and some other, more complicated things. When an epic ends, there is a chance of producing a single insignia, so they are extremely precious. There are only 7 at this time. Wang Chong carefully listened to all of Origin Supreme's words. Before this, Wang Chong had been forced to rely on the memories from his last life to draw conclusions. This was the first time someone had ever told him what was going on. Wang Chong was keenly aware that Origin Supreme's words would have enormous ramifications for both him and the world. As for us? Origin Supreme paused a moment, and then he glanced at Wang Chong and began to slowly speak. I presume that you have guessed it. We Supremes are humans left behind from each epoch. The Celestial God Organization is simply the name we gave to our collective. A more accurate name for us would be the Epic Children. Buzz. Wang Chong felt a buzzing in his ears. The Epic Children? People who had lived an entire epoch? Origin Supreme's words had completely overturned Wang Chong's understanding of the world. He had never imagined the truth to be this. How long could a person live? 10 years, 100, 1,000, 10,000. In the past, Wang Chong would have taken this for complete nonsense, but Origin Supreme was a supreme of the Celestial God Organization, and he had no reason to lie. Wang Chong had always regarded the Celestial God Organization as a pack of schemers that sought to influence human civilization from the shadows, a wicked organization that could kill people without blinking an eye. But according to Origin Supreme, they were actually just survivors from various human civilizations. However, this method of measuring the lifespans of human civilizations was much longer than the scale used by the Kegong Empire or even the Landeshunger civilization. If everything Origin Supreme said was true, this would explain why the Celestial God Organization possessed so many arts, technologies, and ritual tools. And from this, one could say that the people of the Celestial God Organization, including heaven, had lived far longer than they had imagined. Wang Chong quickly got a hold of himself and sternly asked, if this is true, you were once together. Why did you break apart? Heaven even sent Essence Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Radiance Supreme to deal with you. The Arab High Priest's eyes flickered, and Origin Supreme's eyes showed a faint hint of sorrow. You are correct. In normal circumstances, we truly were together, 12 Supremes representing 12 epochs, and we were all people that heaven saved from calamity. You might think that all of the Supremes are heaven's subordinates, but long before that, we were more like friends. But nothing in the world is constant. The start of all this was heaven's purification plan. You have been to the Cold Wave Origin, so you should have some understanding of it, Origin Supreme said. Wang Chong merely nodded in reply. The purification plan was better called the Human Extinction Plan. If heaven had succeeded, countless people would have died, and the remaining humans would just be puppets for heaven. While Wang Chong was the war saint who had killed numerous people, and one could add more than 1 million Alliance soldiers to that number, he was nothing compared to the potential death toll of the purification plan. What is heaven up to? Does he want to exterminate all humans? What benefit does that give him? Wang Chong harshly said, you are wrong. Heaven did not start out with bad intentions. It was just that we could not accept his methods. Origin Supreme shook his head and continued, heaven carries out the purification plan entirely because of the otherworldly invaders. Those words made Wang Chong tremble in shock. Other than the information about heaven, Wang Chong was most concerned about the information on the otherworldly invaders. If there was someone that knew that the truth of the otherworldly invaders, it had to be the Celestial God Organization. Even though Wang Chong had already lived out one life in this world, he still could not compare to the Celestial God Organization in this aspect. You already know of it? The Arab high priest raised an eyebrow in surprise. Wang Chong didn't deny it. As for Origin Supreme, he was unsurprised. What are the otherworldly invaders? Wang Chong sternly said, his expression focused like never before. He was even feeling somewhat nervous. He had been revived through the Stone of Destiny, and he now knew many truths that he had not known about in his last life. However, Wang Chong still knew nothing about those otherworldly invaders. I am afraid that not even I can answer you. To his surprise, Origin Supreme shook his head. We only know that these otherworldly invaders will appear at set intervals. We have tried to find out their secrets, but all of our attempts failed. In this universe, there is an enormous barrier that we cannot cross. Heaven was the strongest amongst us, and he knows even more secrets about the otherworldly invaders. I vaguely recall that Heaven passed through that barrier several epochs ago, but he quickly returned. Heaven has never said a word about his experience. But those otherworldly invaders remained a problem, continuing to enter this world on a large scale at set intervals. A universal barrier. Wang Chong narrowed his eyes as he caught onto an important piece of information in Origin Supreme's words. And after that? Wang Chong pressed. For the next few epochs, we in Heaven tried our utmost to stop those otherworldly invaders, but we would ultimately fail. And after these repeated failures, Heaven changed. Origin Supreme sighed. Wang Chong felt his heart thump as Origin Supreme continued to speak. I don't know what happened to Heaven, but not long afterward the purification plan was born, and it was at that point that the 12 Supremes broke up. What is the purification plan? Wang Chong asked. Despite experiencing it once, Wang Chong was still confused over the purification plan. Have you heard the story of how you the Great tamed the floods? The Arab high priest suddenly butted in. Bang! Wang Chong felt like he had been struck by a bolt of lightning, his body trembling in shock. The purification plan? You the Great taming the floods? Could it be? It seems that you understand. No creature or thing can escape the cycle, can escape death, no plants, trees, or humans, or even the world. It is destroyed again and again, reborn again and again. No matter what we did, we couldn't change it. Origin Supreme's voice echoed through the stone chamber as he slowly closed his eyes and thought back to that long-ago era. No one knows what the objective of the otherworldly invaders is, only that they will utterly destroy the world before disappearing. A cycle that repeats without end. Wang Chong said nothing as he thought back to his own memories. For others, Origin Supreme's words were just a description, but Wang Chong had truly experienced it. The earth crumbling away, the blood and fire gushing out, the ground covered in corpses. A hellish landscape emerged in Wang Chong's mind, a pain that he would never be willing to recall. Perhaps because of our numerous failures, Heaven lost confidence and decided to carry out the purification plan. Since the otherworldly invaders sought to destroy the world, it would be better to simply purify the human world. Destroy the majority of humanity before the otherworldly invaders could, and leave only a minority to serve as seeds for the new world, the sowing of new civilizations. In this way, we could preserve as much civilization from each epoch as possible. Origin Supreme's voice gradually weakened, this conversation seeming to take a great deal of his energy. At the time, this plan attained the support of Essence Supreme, Genesis Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Radiance Supreme, but I and a few others could not accept it. To wipe out so many lives, annihilate tens of millions of people, and transform the thriving human world into a silent hell. How was what we were doing any different from the otherworldly invaders? But this was not the most important. What was most important was that we discovered that Heaven was gradually turning cruel and emotionless, even losing any affection for humans. For him, those beings in the world were the same as ants. He was no longer the same person. As our ideals differed, because we could not approve of Heaven's plan, the 12 Supremes broke up. I left the Celestial God Organization a long time ago. After me, others also left the Celestial God Organization, all of them with their own resolves, so they used different methods, Origin Supreme sternly said. And the others? Wang Chong asked. Senior said that you were not the only person to leave the Celestial God Organization. The Supremes had parted ways. If more than one had left the Celestial God Organization, it meant that if he could find the other Supremes, he could join with them to resist Heaven. This was the best news Wang Chong had heard in a while. You are not unfamiliar with some of them, though they do not call themselves Supremes. You should know of Yusang's Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. Yes? That is the hiding place for one of the Supremes. His name is Unity Supreme, Origin Supreme solemnly said. The High Monk of the Holy Temple? Wang Chong raised an eyebrow in surprise. Almost everyone knew of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. If heaven had been seeking out those rebellious supremes, there was no reason for him to not know of that place. After all, the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple was far more obvious than Origin Supreme, who was hiding away in this tiny space. Unity Supreme joined heaven even earlier than me, and when Unity Supreme's epic perished, it produced an enormous ritual tool that he refined into his personal divine tool. He used that ritual tool to cover the entirety of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. In that region, Unity Supreme can harness the entirety of the Tibetan Plateau's earthly energy and also suppress the strength of other supremes. Thus, even though heaven knew that Unity Supreme was there, neither Genesis Supreme nor Essence Supreme dared to approach him, Origin Supreme said. Wang Chong said nothing as he pondered these revelations. The Sindhu High Priest was a supreme of the Celestial God Organization, as was the High Monk of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. How many other supremes had fled during that time of internal discord, changing their names and appearances as they moved about the world? At this time, Wang Chong felt that his understanding of the world had undergone a momentous shift. In other words, everything was inextricably connected to the Celestial God Organization. The Arab High Priest had established the powerful Arabian Empire, but Origin Supreme alone had been able to protect all of Sindhu. As for the Yusang Empire, it revered the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple, and almost all of its generals had come from that place. Wang Chong had no idea what else he regarded as normal was connected to them. Sindhu is close to Yusang. Why did Unity Supreme do nothing when Essence Supreme's group arrived? Wang Chong suddenly asked. It was useless. Heaven's avatar went there. The one who had spoken was not Origin Supreme, but the Arab High Priest. As the spy within the Celestial God Organization, the Arab High Priest knew much more about what was going on than Wang Chong. The mention of Heaven's avatar amply explained why Unity Supreme had not come. Wang Chong fell silent. The 12 Supremes are not what you imagine them to be. Although some of us did not approve of Heaven's ideas and left over the purification plan, not everyone shared the same idea. Do not believe that just because the Supremes broke up, you can bring together those that fled. Things are far more complicated than that. Origin Supreme spoke in a tone of warning, apparently knowing what Wang Chong was thinking. The 12 Supremes are not kind people. Before their epics crumbled, some of them were ruthless and brutal devils. After a few moments of silence, Origin Supreme began to speak in a much weaker tone. But this is no longer important. The 7 doomsday insignias contain enormous power and are linked to the life and death of this world. If heaven obtains them all, he will break out of his seal, and there will be no saving this world. Origin Immortal's insignia has already been brought to heaven, and now heaven has obtained mine. The time of his escape grows closer and closer. We left the Celestial God Organization with the Doomsday Insignias precisely so that we could buy time and prevent heaven from emerging. But it now seems that things have reached their end. King of foreign lands, remember. No matter what, you must stop him. If he succeeds, the numerous civilizations that live on this world will all end. Under heaven's hand, everything will truly turn to ash. A calamity visited upon the world. More people will die than even under the purification plan. He will show no mercy, Origin Supreme sternly said. He understood heaven too much. The failure of the purification plan had enraged him, and an enraged heaven was more frightening and cruel than at any other time. This would be the annihilation of all humans, for no one could stand against the divine martial realm. The mood in the stone chamber was heavy and still. Even the Arab high priest had a grave expression. He had also devoted some of his sweat and blood into the human world, and he did not wish to see it all turn to nothing. Relax. He won't succeed. In this oppressive air, Wang Chong suddenly spoke. It's impossible for him to gather all the doomsday insignias. Buzz. Wang Chong flipped his palm over, revealing an insignia. This insignia was somewhat similar to the doomsday insignia that the Arab high priest had made a projection of, but it differed in that it also had a few silver inscriptions upon it that endowed it with a hallowed aura. The primal insignia. Li Tai really gave it to him. The two of them stared in shock at the insignia in Wang Chong's hand. The primal insignia? Wang Chong raised an eyebrow. The sage emperor truly had given him this insignia, but Wang Chong had no idea that it was called the primal insignia. The primal insignia is the first doomsday insignia. It is said that it was the first doomsday insignia that heaven discovered, the Arab high priest explained, shooting Wang Chong a complicated glance. There was truly something special about this child of destruction. He had been confused at first, but he now understood why Origin Supreme had chosen to entrust this boy with his hopes. Though there are 7 doomsday insignias, this is the core, the key piece for unsealing heaven. Without it, even if he has the others, he cannot use them. Heaven has sought the primal insignia for several thousand years. It has always been rumored that this insignia was in the hands of some imperial household, but after investigating, heaven ruled it out as complete nonsense. The only signs of progress were with that sage emperor of yours, Li Tai. It seems that Li Tai's death is the key to everything. Heaven is probably certain that the primal insignia is in his hands. Otherwise, heaven wouldn't be doing everything in his power to find the other doomsday insignias. Origin's supreme side in understanding. In truth, heaven had many chances to collect the doomsday insignias, but he had not done so. It was only after a long while that he had chosen to move out. It was now apparent that everything was closely linked. Your Highness, remember, you cannot let heaven obtain the primal insignia. While heaven does not have it, there is still hope. Otherwise, nothing will be able to prevent this world's destruction, Origin Supreme said to Wang Chong. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say more, but a moment later, his face shivered and rapidly paled. He began to fiercely cough, expelling blood. Rumble. The stone chamber began to shudder. The Arab high priest instantly grimaced. In a boom of stellar energy, azure soul power erupted from the Arab high priest's body and transformed into various talismans that attached themselves to the walls. The chamber quickly stabilized and Origin Supreme's complexion rapidly improved. Origin Supreme, my spell cannot last for much longer. Tell him the most important parts, the Arab high priest sternly said, an urgent tone to his voice. Your Highness, you must remember everything I am about to say. First, it is not easy to meet with the Tibetan Plateau's Unity Supreme, but if necessary, you must seek his help. Second, there is a war god worshipped by the Turks of the steppe who is also one of the Supremes. His name is Luo Supreme, and he secludes himself within Mount Yaluo. A Turkic war god? Wang Chong's eyes flew open upon hearing Origin Supreme's words. Wang Chong was no stranger to this term. The traitor of the Great Tang, and Lushan, had called himself the son of the Turkic war god. Wang Chong had thought this a legend. For generations, in order to draw attention to their noble status, all sovereigns would call themselves reincarnations of gods or true dragons, and from this many stories had been born. But Wang Chong had never imagined that the legend would be true for in Lushan. Luo Supreme's lay name was Yaluo. In order to remember his mortal life before he followed heaven, he raised a part of the crust and called it Mount Yaluo. That in Lushan that you defeated was probably an accidental product from one of his affairs. The Arab high priest added, clearly familiar with these details. Wang Chong said nothing, his heart trembling in shock. Wang Chong had always been suspicious of divine legends like these, but it now appeared that while legends might have been fake, they had their bases in reality. During that time of internal discord, many people left heaven and left the celestial god organization. Luo Supreme was one of them, but his reasoning was different from all the others. Luo Supreme is extremely selfish, and he has always had a powerful desire for authority. However, he lacked the strength and could never surpass heaven. After that internal strife, Luo Supreme departed and seemingly disappeared. Origin Supreme continued to speak. Luo Supreme has always been very fearful of heaven, so he has been extremely inconspicuous over the years. He calls himself the Turkic war god, but he has barely ever displayed any divine skills, leaving behind only a few female priests. But what is key is that Luo Supreme holds one of heaven's important secrets. Other than Essence Supreme, only Luo Supreme knows where heaven is sealed. No matter what, You cannot let heaven get out. If you wish to truly save the world, find Luo Supreme, find where heaven is sealed, and defeat him where he is sealed. This is the only hope for the world. Origin Supreme's voice grew weaker and weaker, the light in his eyes rapidly dimming. Senior, Wang Chong's heart shivered. He knew that Origin Supreme couldn't last for much longer. Bang! A moment later, Wang Chong unleashed a vast torrent of Grotto Heaven stellar energy that he sent into Origin Supreme's head. But on the moment of contact, Wang Chong realized to his shock that Origin Supreme's situation was even worse than he had envisioned. Origin Supreme's soul was shattered and full of holes. It was actually a miracle that he could still remain conscious and speak with him. Your Highness, this is the last remnant of my soul and contains countless years' worth of memories. It might be useful to you in your future battle against heaven. Origin Supreme looked at Wang Chong, his complexion turning a healthy red for a moment, seeming even healthier than an ordinary person. The Arab High Priest and Wang Chong both shivered. This was a soul echo, a sign that the last sliver of Origin Supreme's soul was about to disperse. Buzz! Origin Supreme's mouth opened, and a golden Buddha Sarira slowly made its way toward Wang Chong. A Buddha Sarira. The Arab High Priest's eyelids dropped as he let out a long sigh. The Supremes of the Celestial God Organization had various identities. Just like how Luo Supreme was known as the Turkic war god on the steppe and had created many myths, Origin Supreme had another important identity within Sindhu. Starting from a very long time ago, Origin Supreme was known to the natives as the Buddha, and he had created the Buddhist culture of Sindhu. The Buddha Sarira was Origin Supreme's core. Extracting the Buddha Sarira meant that Origin Supreme would completely disappear. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, the golden Buddha Sarira disappeared into Wang Chong's forehead. The head on the stone table quickly grew still, and that energy belonging to Origin Supreme vanished. Ha! The Arab High Priest let out a long sigh, a look of deep sorrow on his face. Sindhu and Arabia were nearby, and the two of them had a much deeper relationship than many would expect. In the end, he had watched a friend pass. Grandmaster, go well? Your Highness, my mission is done. This place can't last for much longer, so you should leave. I hope that Origin Supreme did not make the wrong choice, and I hope that you will not disappoint me. With this said, the Arab High Priest prepared to leave. Senior, after a few moments of silence, Wang Chong called out, Are we enemies or friends? Wang Chong had many questions about this high priest. In many aspects, they were friends, but Wang Chong felt from the Arab high priest's actions that things were far more complicated than they seemed. Neither. The Arab high priest looked at Wang Chong and calmly said, Before I leave, I have something important to tell you. Though you have subdued the other countries in the War of the Northeast, you cannot drop your guard. From what I know, Heaven is preparing to summon the Celestial Army. The Celestial Army? Wang Chong's eyes twitched. The high priest did not say any more. Rather, he pressed a finger against Wang Chong's forehead, and Wang Chong was instantly drawn into a different world. Rumble. In a flash of light and rumble of thunder, Wang Chong discovered that he was in a massive underground space. He was confused at first, but in a flash of light, a golden armored soldier appeared before him. This soldier had a black symbol on his forehead, and his eyes were closed, his expression calm. His body was laid on a stone platform that was nearly as tall as Wang Chong, motionless as if he was sleeping. A second, a third, a fourth. This underground space was packed with these slumbering golden warriors. Even though they were sleeping, Wang Chong could still sense a formidable power in their bodies. But most astonishing was their number. Wang Chong sensed that there were at least 1 million of them. Over the numerous eras, Heaven has been training an extremely powerful army. The Arab high priest's voice rang out in his ear. With each cycle, he will select the finest soldiers of the epic and use a secret technique so that they will become soldiers that only heed his command. This is a power that belongs solely to Heaven, and their sole reason for existence is to deal with situations like this one. Wang Chong's expression was grave. He knew that the high priest was showing him his memories of seeing the celestial army. Although you have subdued the alliance and made them part of your own strength, even expanding the Great Tang to cover the entire continent. Things are far from over. When drafting the purification plan, Heaven accounted for what would happen if he encountered some powerful resistance that he could not take down through mortal forces. The celestial army exists for Heaven to ensure that his plan can be implemented. In the future, the difficulties you face will be far more difficult than you can imagine. It is best if you prepare yourself. The high priest's somber voice rang out in his ear as the scene dispersed and the two returned to the cave. Wang Chong looked at the high priest, his heart heavy. He had not imagined this development. If what the high priest said was true and the Celestial God Organization still had this hidden card, the situation facing the continent would be much graver than he had imagined. How much longer? Wang Chong suddenly asked. The Arab high priest subtly nodded. As someone who could so quickly get a hold of himself and think of countermeasures, Wang Chong truly possessed attributes that others did not. It won't be that soon. It won't be until Heaven has completely freed himself. But it won't be that long. Whether or not you can stop the Celestial Army will depend on how well you utilize your time, the Arab high priest sternly said, giving Wang Chong a profound look. It's about time. I should leave. If I do not appear soon, Essence Supreme will begin suspecting me. The Arab high priest strode past Wang Chong and blinked out of existence. But his voice lingered in the distance. If it is destined, we will meet again. With the high priest gone, the cave quickly fell silent. Wang Chong stood motionless as countless thoughts ran through his mind, but he quickly came back to his senses. Wang Chong looked at the ceiling of the cave. With Origin Supreme's death, this dimension was growing unstable, and countless bits of stone were showering down from the trembling ceiling. But strangely, as the cave shuddered, he could feel his stellar energy resonating with it. This cave was a small dimension that Origin Supreme had created, and its energy source was the Buddha Sarira. In giving the Sarira to Wang Chong, Origin Supreme had also passed over the ownership of this dimension to Wang Chong. Withdraw. After a few moments of thought, Wang Chong opened his eyes, extending his middle and index fingers as he formed a spell. In a rush of air, energy began to surge into Wang Chong's body from the surroundings. Bzzz. Everything fell silent, and between Wang Chong's fingers was a translucent crystal the size of a thumb, appearing like a diamond. A grotto heaven core. Wang Chong's expression was grave. He knew that Origin Supreme had left something for him, but he hadn't expected this. Wang Chong had killed Firmament Supreme and Genesis Supreme, so he was extremely familiar with top-class grotto heaven cores. It's no wonder the Celestial God Organization couldn't do anything to him even though they knew he was in Hyderabad, or even find out his exact location. It's because of this grotto heaven core. Wang Chong pensively looked at the grotto heaven core. Many of the questions he had been answered. Each Supreme had their strong points, unique methods that could gain them victory or protect themselves. Origin Supreme had been capable of transforming his Grotto Heaven core into a dimension that could conceal his aura from Grotto Heaven realm experts. The others, including Unity Supreme in the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple and the Turkic War God on Mount Yaluo, had similar abilities. Though this method didn't make them completely unfindable, it would be like trying to find a grain of gold in the middle of sand. Rumble. After a few moments of quiet, the cave once more began to tremble. Without the support of the Grotto Heaven core, the underground rock layer had become unstable, and he could hear cracking and groaning coming from above. Wang Chong knew that this place was about to collapse and that he needed to leave. Buzz. Wang Chong used his earth movement technique and began to make his way through the rock. On the surface, Li Sai, young Master Qingyang, and Old Eagle quickly spotted Wang Chong and went up to meet him. Your Highness, how did it go? The three of them had sensed a massive tremor from beneath Hyderabad and knew that it had to be connected to Wang Chong. I've already met him. Let's go. Wang Chong was stingy with the details. The others nodded and asked no questions. Bang! A moment later, a silver barrier emerged from Wang Chong's body, sweeping up the trio, and the group began to make its way back to the capital. He had learned a lot from this trip to Sindhu. He needed to use this time and strengthen himself. In addition, there was only half a month until his wedding with Su Qichin. Future events were very important, but so were the people at his side. Time went by quickly, and the journey back to the Great Tang was smooth. That incident in Hyderabad had seemingly not drawn the Celestial God Organization's attention. Or perhaps they believed that Origin Supreme was long dead and had not left anything behind. But for some reason, Wang Chong remained uneasy, and this unease only intensified as they got closer to the capital. What's going on here? As they approached a wild area of the Tsong Mountains, Wang Chong frowned, his mind in turmoil. Grotto Heaven Realm experts had firm resolves and would not inexplicably feel unease. Wang Chong knew that there had to be a reason for this. In the middle of his thoughts, Li Sai suddenly called out, "Your Highness, look! What's wrong?" Wang Chong frowned and turned in the direction of the voice. Behind him, he saw that Li Sai, young Master Qingyang, and Old Eagle were all looking up with strange expressions. Wang Chong was somewhat flabbergasted. He had far more psychic energy than these three, and within 10 li, he could even sense a passing bird. But all was quiet around them. However, a moment later, Wang Chong sensed something and looked upward. Clouds drifted in the air, but at some point, the sky had darkened. Following their gaze, Wang Chong saw a full moon hanging in the sky, though perhaps it could not be called a full moon now. A black shadow had appeared from the left and was beginning to rapidly obscure it. A lunar eclipse, Li Sai, young Master Qingyang, and Old Eagle called out in unison. Buzz! These words set off a storm in Wang Chong's mind, and his unease reached maximum. Boom! The black shadow completely covered the bright moon, casting the world into darkness. At that moment, countless images emerged in Wang Chong's mind. On the third lunar eclipse, you will encounter the greatest trial in your entire life and lose that which is most precious to you. You will also sense the greatest isolation. A familiar voice rang out in Wang Chong's mind like a bell, causing his blood to seethe. Origin, immortal lord, Wang Chong softly muttered. A lunar eclipse was a rare phenomenon that would always draw attention, even be recorded in the history books. But for Wang Chong, this was no simple lunar eclipse. If he recalled correctly, this was now the third lunar eclipse since the reign of the Sage Emperor, fitting perfectly with the Origin Immortal Lord's prophecy. The plan has changed. We're turning to the capital as quickly as possible. Wang Chong's eyes twitched as he swept up the trio and hastened the journey to the capital. The Origin Immortal Lord had specialized in divination and could be considered the #1 diviner. He had even predicted several thousand years ago that Wang Chong would appear and made the appropriate preparations. Wang Chong had believed that the third lunar eclipse that the Origin Immortal Lord had spoken of would not come so quickly, so he had never cared about it too much. But to his consternation, it had occurred right as he was about to return to the capital from Sindhu. Lose that which is most precious to you. You will also sense the greatest isolation. The Origin Immortal Lord's words left Wang Chong extremely worried. Boom! Wang Chong had a very fast reaction time, but he had still underestimated how rapidly the situation was developing. 1 hour later, Wang Chong's mind trembled, and it felt like some sort of thread in his mind snapped. There was an emptiness in his mind, as if he had lost something extremely important to him. Divine Embryo 2. Divine Embryo 3. Wang Chong's face rapidly turned into a scowl. He had suddenly lost his connection with Divine Embryos 2 and 3. While Wang Chong had left the capital, he had left Divine Embryos 2 and 3 in the capital. Moreover, the capital had the Xianxia formation and numerous experts. All these measures ensured that there would be no mishaps in the capital, which was why Wang Chong could leave with some peace of mind. But it was evident that some mysterious incident had taken place in the capital. The 2 divine embryos were linked to his mind, and even if something had happened, they should have quickly conveyed it to him. But now, there appeared to be some barrier that blocked any information. Old Eagle, hurry and contact Xianxia, Wang Chong suddenly said. Your Highness, what's wrong? Old Eagle sternly said. Just now, he had only felt that a lunar eclipse was an extremely rare phenomenon, but his liege's reaction meant that things were clearly not that simple. Hurry and get in touch with Xianxia. I need to know what happened in the capital, Wang Chong sternly said. Wang Chong's body erupted with Grotto Heaven Realm energy, and he even controlled spacetime energy to shorten their journey to the capital. Wang Chong quickly crossed through the western regions, all the while waiting for news from Jean Quebec. After numerous experiences, Xianxia was completely capable of handling things by himself. If something happened in the capital, Xianxia would send a messenger bird to inform Wang Chong without any prompting. But a day had passed without any movement from the capital, and Wang Chong had not received any information. It was like nothing had happened. This only made Wang Chong more uneasy. When Wang Chong arrived at Longxi, Xianxia's messenger bird finally arrived. Xianxia expressed that everything was going well and that nothing had happened. He even asked if anything had happened to them. Xianxia's letter was a relief to Wang Chong. Both he and Old Eagle were very familiar with Xianxia's handwriting, and there was no doubting the veracity of the letter. Even so, Wang Chong still felt some doubt and suspicion. Xianxia would not lie, and there was no doubting his loyalty. But there was also no doubt that he had lost connection with his two divine embryos. It was like a thick fog had descended over the capital. Outside the western gate of the capital, about several dozen meters away, 3 people looked at the magnificent gates and exhaled in relief. "Your Highness, we've finally arrived. It seems that everything is fine in the capital," young Master Qingyang said in relief as he surveyed the capital. Young Master Qingyang had rarely seen Wang Chong so concerned. They had traveled night and day, and the fact that Old Eagle was saying that there was no news from Xianxia left all of them worried, believing that something really had happened in the capital. But in their view, the capital of the Great Tang, the center of the world, was still lively and bustling, no, even more bustling and prosperous than before. With the continent united, all countries under one banner, the Great Tang's capital had many more people in it than before. Wang Chong narrowed his eyes and surveyed the capital. Everything truly did seem normal, but for some reason he still felt rather uneasy that something was wrong. "Come on. Let's get back and then talk about it," Wang Chong sternly said. Only by finding Xianxia or his 2 missing divine embryos and studying their memories could he learn what had happened. "Wow! Candy! Let them give birth to an early heir and grow old together. It's mine! It's mine!" Childish laughter came from the gate, and before Wang Chong could react, several giggling children ran out with handfuls of celebration candy. Behind them, a resplendently dressed woman with a bamboo basket was smiling. Wang Chong's group could see that there were many more candies in the basket. Besides the children, some passers-by also asked for a few, and there was a jubilant mood in the air. Young Master Qingyang smiled as he stepped forward and asked, "Miss, which family is holding a wedding that the celebration candy has already been distributed up to the gate?" "Hee, young sir, what a strange question. Did you not see the lanterns and ribbons hanging from the walls, and all the celebratory streamers and red lanterns?" The woman asked back, looking at young Master Qingyang with a strange expression. "Who in the capital does not know about the wedding in the imperial court? This is the wedding between the king of foreign lands and the lady of the Su clan." Buzz. Wang Chong had been walking over, but when he heard this reply, he shivered and stopped as if he had been frozen in place. Old Eagle's and Li Sai's expressions also turned strange. They had noticed the red celebratory decorations on the walls of the capital, but because Wang Chong had been so worried, they had had no time to worry about such things. None of them had realized that these large red lanterns and the celebration candy being distributed would be connected to Wang Chong. The marriage of Wang Chong and Su Qichin was the marriage of the generation, and everyone in the capital knew about it. But the key point was that the male lead of this wedding had not even been in the capital. Why was the capital already getting ready for the wedding? The 3 of them immediately felt that something was wrong. But young Master Qingyang quickly got a hold of himself. "My thanks." He bowed at the woman before returning to Wang Chong's side, his voice hesitant. "Young Master, it's so strange," Old Eagle said, his sharp eyes surveying his surroundings. The capital was still the same capital and not too different from before. But for some reason he felt something weird. "Don't you think it's too calm?" What's wrong about it being calm?" Li Sai asked in surprise. He thought that Old Eagle had some insight to share, but he hadn't expected this. All was peaceful and quiet in the capital, the same as it had been since the time of Emperor Gaozu. What was so surprising about it? Sai, you've been with young master for many years, and you should know what the capital is like whenever young master returns. Would it be like this? Moreover, the woman spoke of the Wang clan's wedding, but the young master is right here, and she didn't recognize him. Old Eagle sternly said, his thick brows furrowed. Ah! Li Sai finally understood what Old Eagle meant. It truly was too calm. Anything could happen when his liege returned to the capital, except this sort of peace and quiet. Looking around, he saw that it wasn't just that woman. All the passers-by were too calm, and though there were so many people, none of them seemed to notice Wang Chong. It was like he didn't exist. The three of them instinctively turned to Wang Chong and saw that his face was calm. It was clear that he had already recognized this peculiarity. There's no need to say any more. Once we return to the residence, we'll know everything, Wang Chong sternly said. He knew what Old Eagle wanted to say, but with so many people around, it wasn't right to cause too much of a stir. However, there was one thing he was sure of. Someone had been causing trouble in the capital while they were gone, and no matter who they were, Wang Chong would make them regret it. Buzz! There was a harsh gleam in Wang Chong's eyes, and a moment later, a dark golden halo of spacetime emerged from beneath his feet as Wang Chong took the three of them and vanished. The king of foreign lands' residence was splendid and grandiose. Stop! As Wang Chong led the three into the estate, crossing halberds barred his path. Two stalwart guards came forward and called him to halt. Impudent! You dare to disrespect His Highness! Before Wang Chong could say anything, Old Eagle exploded with rage. Wang Chong was the hero of the Great Tang, and everyone from the highest official to the lowest commoner respected him. These people were Wang Chong's guards, but they dared to disrespect him? Was there anyone in the Great Tang with such audacity? Impudent! But to Old Eagle's surprise, these guards were seemingly enraged by this rebuke. His Highness is out on campaign and will arrive in the capital in a few days. You have some guts to disguise yourself as His Highness. His Highness has always been humble and unpretentious, so we'll let you off this time. Get out of here! The guards rebuked, as if they really were talking to a bunch of strangers. A dark cloud of worry appeared over Wang Chong's brow. These two guards really didn't recognize him. There was nothing more absurd in the world. Moreover, he had only gone out to Sindhu, so how was it that his guards no longer recognized him? Leave at on. Just as the two guards were about to drive them away, bzzz. There was a mental ripple and the two guards froze in place. Wang Chong's psychic energy had already penetrated into their minds. A few moments later, Wang Chong trembled, his face paling. Impossible! At the start, he had believed that these guards were under the control of someone or that this was some poor joke. But upon searching their memories, he found that there were no memories related to him. His existence had seemingly been wiped out from their minds without leaving a trace. Upon seeing his reaction, young Master Qingyang and Old Eagle immediately asked, Your Highness, did you find anything? No, Wang Chong shook his head. As Wang Chong was preparing to search deeper, something surprising happened. Thump! Thump! The two guards toppled over like wooden pillars, unconscious. All of them were struck dumb, and even Wang Chong appeared surprised. Wang Chong was well aware of his mastery over psychic energy. That probe just now was not enough to knock out these two powerful guards. These two had not just simply fainted. Wang Chong's face turned extremely grave. But before Wang Chong had any time to find the reason, a sharp bark came from the estate. Who goes there? Messing around in the royal residence. Cackalack. The clunking of gears came from various parts of the estate. A few moments later, countless people emerged from various areas around the king of foreign lands' residence. Experts even emerged from the walls, the gate, and even the residences outside the estate. Numerous arrows were aimed at Wang Chong's group, and there were even ballistae. The collapse of the two guards had triggered the estate's defensive system, immediately causing Wang Chong's group to be targeted. Amidst the tension, Old Eagle spotted a familiar figure amongst the guards. Xianxia, you came at just the right time. Old Eagle called out to the youth. Have these people withdraw. Do you not even recognize His Highness? Xianxia was his apprentice and had always followed his orders. This was why Old Eagle was so agitated. You are Master. The youth hadn't noticed at the start, but he quickly grew excited. Didn't you go out to the frontier? Why did you come back so soon? Xianxia excitedly said as he walked up to welcome him. What are you looking at? Put away your arrows. Following Xianxia's order, the numerous experts around the estate dispersed. Xianxia had the look of an admiring child, and his excitement and joy were impossible to hide. Right, Master. Who is this? Xianxia pointed at Wang Chong. Buzz. Xianxia's appearance had relaxed the atmosphere, but with these words, the mood instantly turned tense and strange once more. The eyes of young Master Qingyang and Li Sai flew open, their eyelids madly twitching. The problems in the capital were far more serious than first thought. Xianxia recognized Old Eagle, but he didn't recognize Wang Chong. Something like this was simply unimaginable. Moreover, when Xianxia talked to Old Eagle, he said that he should have been out on the frontier, but they had gone to Sindhu. Xianxia should have known all about this. Was Xianxia working with everyone else to play some terrible joke on their liege before his wedding? Considering Xianxia's personality, they could basically rule that out. As for the second possibility, young Master Qingyang and Li Sai glanced at each other, their faces turning grave. He, Xianxia, do you recognize me? Young Master Qingyang asked, smiling as he stepped up. As he spoke, young Master Qingyang stared hard at Xianxia, trying to catch every one of his movements. Xianxia smiled and casually said, He, aren't you young Master Qingyang? We've met each other a few times, so how could I forget you? His tone when he spoke to young Master Qingyang was clearly much warmer. But this only made the mood even weirder. Xianxia recognized Old Eagle and recognized him, but he did not recognize Wang Chong. Moreover, just like how Old Eagle was supposedly on the frontier, while Xianxia recognized them, he understood their circumstances to be completely different. From Xianxia's tone, he and young Master Qingyang were mere acquaintances, but in reality, young Master Qingyang was one of Wang Chong's important subordinates and one of the most trusted aides in the estate. Young Master Qingyang used a message transmission technique to whisper into Wang Chong's ears. Your Highness, this is bad. Xianxia's memories have been heavily altered. The entire King of Foreign Lands' residence. No, perhaps even the entire capital might have had their memories modified. Wang Chong subtly nodded. He had begun to suspect this when he saw that young lady distributing candies at the gate. Let alone now. The only things Wang Chong wanted to know right now were who had done this and why they had done it. If it was an enemy, why had they not just killed Xianxia and the others rather than resort to a method like this? Wang Chong used his psychic energy to connect their minds. Qingyang, Old Eagle, Sai, bide our time for now. Let's not alarm the snake until we've finished our investigation. Old Eagle, calm Xianxia and enter the residence. I need you to gather more information. Yes, Your Highness. The three of them exchanged glances and quickly reached an agreement. Once everything was handled, Wang Chong smiled, stepped forward, and gave Xianxia a profound glance. Xianxia, do you really not recognize me? This good sir. Xianxia grinned. Just when he was about to say no, he heard something flabbergasting. Do you still keep that Art of War chess book in that jade pillow and sleep with it every night? These words set off massive waves in Xianxia's mind, and Xianxia looked in shock at this fellow that his master had brought. That Art of War chess was his most valuable possession, and he had even crafted a jade pillow with a secret compartment in which he kept the book, sleeping on it every night. This was a secret that he had never even told his master. How had this friend his master had brought with him from outside know about it? Wang Chong looked at Xianxia and asked, Do you remember who gifted you that book? Boom! Xianxia's mind was thrown into disarray, as if thunder had exploded within it. Countless fragments of memories exploded out of his mind like an erupting volcano. Xianxia covered his head with his arms and staggered back several steps, his brow furrowing in pain. The art of war chess was his most precious possession, but why did he consider it so important? He had never been much of a reader. Moreover, why was it that he didn't remember who had sent him something so important and where it had come from? Numerous memories rushed into his mind. Wait, who are you? Why do I feel like I've met you before? As Xianxia looked at Wang Chong, his face was stricken with pain and confusion. Seeing this, Wang Chong sighed. Flicking his finger, he sent a surreptitious sliver of energy into Xianxia to soothe the pain in his mind. Young Master Qingyang and the others all had complicated expressions on their faces. They naturally knew where he had gotten the art of war chess from. Wang Chong had personally written it, and while several editions had been printed, Wang Chong had gifted the first edition to Xianxia. Xianxia had naturally valued it as a supreme treasure. Though the memories of Wang Chong in Xianxia's mind had been wiped away, he still instinctively kept the gift Wang Chong had given him. No matter who was controlling everything, it was impossible to be absolutely flawless. Old Eagle, let's part ways here. Wang Chong and Old Eagle exchanged glances, and then Wang Chong left. Once he was gone, Wang Chong soared into the air, and as a dark golden halo of space-time emerged, Wang Chong appeared high in the sky. From high in the sky, the vast capital appeared to be the size of a millstone. Wang Chong's eyes half-closed as he sent out a wave of psychic energy, at the same time linking with the Xiangliu formation beneath the capital. This was the formation the Sage Emperor had left to protect the capital. Before leaving, he had given control of the formation to Divine Embryo 3. However, he could take back control whenever he wanted. Buzz. A few moments later, Wang Chong opened his eyes, his expression grim. Upon arrival at the capital, he had been able to tell that there was a problem with the formation, but he had never expected the situation to be this bad. The Xiangliu formation, which had been surging with energy, was now silent. More importantly, Wang Chong discovered that he had completely lost his connection to the formation. It wasn't that Wang Chong had been stripped of this privilege, but rather that the formation was silent and seemingly sealed. The Xiangliu formation's core and energy source was the Three Emperors formation beneath the Imperial Palace. As long as the Three Emperors formation existed, the Xiangliu formation would continue to run. But now, Wang Chong sensed that the connection between the two formations had been cut, like there was some invisible barrier between them. Wang Chong narrowed his eyes as all kinds of ideas occurred to him. After some time, Wang Chong muttered a single word. Heaven! This situation was clearly abnormal, and the only person capable of this feat was Heaven. Wang Chong did not believe that Essence Supreme was this powerful. But this revelation only made Wang Chong turn even more serious. Heaven was only a name, a code name. There had never been any detailed information on him, and even the Sage Emperor knew only of this name and nothing else. Not even the 12 Supremes were very clear on Heaven's background. Heaven had been born far earlier than the 12 Supremes. He wasn't even from the same epoch. Heaven's appearance and abilities were unknown, and not even Origin Supreme's memories had contained anything on them. Moreover, while he suspected that nightmarish experience before his journey to Sindhu to be the work of Heaven and had seen an indistinct figure, Wang Chong had yet to see his face. This was an unseen enemy. Hiss! Wang Chong let out a breath and got a hold of himself. He did not try to repair the Xiangliu formation or remove that invisible obstruction. On the contrary, he decided to withdraw all of his energy so that not even the tiniest sliver leaked out. Wang Chong now appeared like nothing more than a cloud drifting in the sky, barely even existing. It's enough. I have to root out the arch-criminal behind all this. Wang Chong blinked as he resolved himself. Young Master Qingyang and the others were right. Their only advantage was that the capital had more than 1 million inhabitants and numerous experts. Heaven was not guaranteed to have sensed his existence. The ability Wang Chong had used was Origin Supreme's Rotten Wood Art. With this art, one constricted all their energy so that they seemed like nothing more than a piece of rotten wood in the middle of sludge. This art would be nothing but a joke in front of Heaven's original body. But things were different with Heaven's avatar. Whoosh! Wang Chong vanished like a ghost from the sky, as if he had never existed. Wang Chong was the king of foreign lands, an outstanding vassal of the country, and the imperial household had even constructed the king of foreign lands' residence for him. But in the end, the estate in the southwestern part of the capital where his mother and little sister resided was Wang Chong's true foundation, the start of everything. At this time, the Wang family residence was brightly lit, laughter ringing through the corridors as beaming maids and servants walked around. Beneath the eaves, flanking the doors, hanging from branches, atop the fake mountains, bright lanterns were placed everywhere, illuminating the residence in a jubilant glow. The marriage between the Wang clan and Su clan had the attention of the world. Many places in the estate had been renovated to appear as new, and all members of the household were elated. Buzz. In a corridor on the western side of the residence, a tall and gray-robed figure stood. Though he was dressed as a servant, his bright and dazzling eyes indicated that he was not as simple as he seemed. The gray-robed servant was none other than Wang Chong. Everything seems peaceful. There hasn't been too much change, Wang Chong thought to himself as he looked around. After disguising himself as a servant, Wang Chong had immediately gone to see if his family was safe. Heaven regarded himself highly, as the master of all gods, so would he disdain to lower himself to that level, or would he have some other scheme? But Wang Chong had discovered that his parents, sister, and brothers were all present. It was like nothing had changed since he had left. But just like with the king of foreign lands' residence, all memories concerning him had been wiped away. Perhaps it was better to say that they still remembered Wang Chong, but that man wasn't him. Red lanterns illuminated his face and laughter rang out in his ears. Wang Chong was the only one who noticed anything strange. Cuckoo. As Wang Chong was thinking, a messenger pigeon with a golden thread tied around its leg descended from the sky toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong reached out and received the pigeon. He quickly removed its letter and began to read through it. The letter was from Old Eagle, the report Wang Chong had been waiting for since daytime. Buzz. Once he was done with the letter, his heart sank, a dark cloud of worry flitting across his brow. Something huge had happened in the capital. Wang Chong had just returned and wasn't clear on the situation, so he had had Old Eagle investigate. But the situation was worse than he had imagined. Wang Chong had told Old Eagle to get in touch with the demonic Emperor Old Man and the Wuxiang village chief. At the time of his departure, the two of them had been cultivating in the capital, and there was no way they would not have noticed such a momentous shift. Wang Chong was extremely confident in the abilities of his seniors. So long as he could find them, he would be able to find out what was going on and save time. But the result of Old Eagle's investigation left his heart heavy. The demonic Emperor Old Man and Wuxiang village chief had not had their memories wiped, nor were they heavily injured and recovering. Rather, it was something Wang Chong had never imagined. Just like Wang Chong, the existence of the demonic Emperor Old Man and Wuxiang village chief had been completely wiped out. Old Eagle had asked everyone, sent people to the demonic Emperor Old Man's home on the Spirit Vein, and visited every place in the capital the demonic Emperor Old Man might be, but he had failed to find any trace of them. No one knew who the demonic Emperor Old Man was, and even the Wuxiang cavalry had no memory of the village chief. Li Sai had carried out the investigation in that area. All of this made one tremble in fear. Their existences had not been simply forgotten. They had been wiped out from their memories. Quite a few people had known about the demonic Emperor Old Man and the Wuxiang village chief. The sovereigns, the children at the Spirit Vein, Wang Chong's little sister, the tea house that the demonic Emperor Old Man often frequented, the people of Wuxiang village, Wang Chong's subordinates, besides Old Eagle, Li Sai, and young Master Qingyang, who had followed Wang Chong to Sindhu. Everyone had cleanly forgotten the existence of the demonic Emperor Old Man and Wuxiang village chief. Wang Chong scowled as he looked at the letter. He had never imagined a development like this. His master and the Wuxiang village chief were not weaklings. Perhaps they had realized the abnormality in the capital and chosen to leave, unable to deal with the situation, or else. Wang Chong didn't dare to continue on this line of thought. This situation was growing more and more mystifying. What had happened in the capital while he was gone? Even so, Wang Chong didn't panic. Everything was still a possibility. Even if his master and the Wuxiang village chief encountered some powerful foe, they would have the strength to protect themselves. Things were perhaps not as bad as he imagined. Mother! As he was pondering, he heard a familiar voice. Coming to his senses, he spotted a familiar figure skipping past him like a rabbit and into the inner residence. She passed by Wang Chong without a glance, completely ignoring him. Little sister. Wang Chong silently cried out. This was truly his little sister, as simple-minded as ever. Wang Chong didn't alarm anyone. After a moment of thought, he also made his way into the inner residence. Wang Chong first went to his own study. The study had a simple and ancient decor, and everything was arranged in the same way he had left it. A sparrow occupying the turtle-dove's nest. This was Wang Chong's current situation. No one in the capital recognized Wang Chong, but the memory of the king of foreign lands still existed in their minds. It was just that this person wasn't him. Most bizarrely, although the capital was in the middle of preparing for the wedding between Wang Chong and Su Qichin, implying that the king of foreign lands was in the capital, whether it was through conversation or memory searching, Wang Chong was unable to find anyone who knew where the king of foreign lands actually was. Even though the servants of the Wang family were constantly chattering about Wang Chong, when Wang Chong disguised himself and asked the servants about that man's appearance, they all became clueless, incapable of describing him. It was like everyone was remembering a fictional character. But the wedding between the king of foreign lands and the lady of the Su clan was taking place in 10 days. When the time came, that king of foreign lands would have to show himself. The one who untied the bell would have to tie the bell back. Wang Chong was confident that this place, as the heart of everything, was where he could find the answer. There was no one around, and as Wang Chong investigated, he found that though the study had not changed in general, some of the small details had changed. It shouldn't just be a simply made-up person. Wang Chong quickly took a weasel bristle brush from the brush stand. Wang Chong's calligraphy had never been very pretty. The song of purity and peace he had gifted to consort Taijin all the way at the beginning had been twisted and crooked, repulsive to behold. Thus, Wang Chong had constantly been practicing his calligraphy. Wang Chong favored the weasel bristle brush, but not this one. Wang Chong's brush had been about as thick as a pinky finger, and Li Hong had specifically chosen it from the palace collection as a gift for him. The surface of the brush had been cinnabar red, so Wang Chong had called it the cinnabar brush. But the weasel bristle brush on the stand was a grayish brown. The inkstone has also been used. At least 3 inches have been shaved off. They must have written some calligraphy here. Wang Chong's eyes closed as he began to reconstruct what had happened here. While he was away in Sindhu, some guest had undoubtedly paid a visit to his study. They had not merely observed, but had even used his inkstone. And also, Wang Chong suddenly sat himself in the armchair behind his desk, his arms resting themselves on the armrests. He slightly leaned back and began to re-examine the study. At that moment, Wang Chong's expression and demeanor transformed into those of someone else entirely. Hiss! A few moments later, Wang Chong opened his eyes. At this time he was Wang Chong once more. At this moment, he was certain that someone had come here with the relaxed demeanor of an owner. He had carefully examined this place, attempting to understand him through the study. Wang Chong's eyes turned sharp and vicious. Heaven! He couldn't confirm it, but he was certain that this was all linked to the Celestial God Organization. Creak! At this moment the door was pushed open. Wang Chong's heart thumped as he turned to look, at the same time hearing the shaking of a pearl hairpin and sensing a familiar energy. A middle-aged beauty in a silk gown, her face elegant and refined, walked in from outside. M.O. Wang Chong's eyebrows rose as his mouth opened. The word mother was about to leave his mouth when he suddenly stopped. Wang Chong understood that he had changed his appearance and made himself into a servant of the estate, that he was not Wang Chong. In truth, even if he had his original face, his mother was not guaranteed to recognize him. You're... As Madame Wang walked in and saw someone in the chair, her face froze. She had clearly not expected anyone to be inside. Madam! Wang Chong hastily stood up and bowed. This one is a new servant of the estate who was ordered to come here and tidy His Highness's study. So that's how it was. Madame Wang smiled and did not question him. The households of great clans had strict hierarchies, but the Wang family residence was not as strict. In many aspects, it was very accommodating. This was why many maids and servants liked the Wang clan. "Madam, please sit." Wang Chong quickly stepped aside. Though he wanted to talk with his mother, he knew that this wasn't the time. Madame Wang didn't notice anything suspicious. She sat herself in the armchair, an arm propping on the armrest as her brow furrowed. "Is there something on Madame's mind?" Wang Chong suddenly said. This was the first time he had seen his mother so worried. "It's nothing." Madame Wang smiled and waved her hand, clearly unwilling to speak about it. "If you have some difficulty, perhaps this lowly one could help you take care of it," Wang Chong softly said. He had rarely seen his mother so worried, and her reluctance only made him want to know even more. "It's nothing. It's going to be the wedding between Chonger and Lady Su soon, but for some reason, I feel like something's wrong." As Madame Wang spoke, her gaze dropped. Rather than to this servant, she was more speaking to herself. "Buzz." Madame Wang was just making an offhand comment, but Wang Chong felt his heart shudder. It felt like he had been completely forgotten upon his return to the capital. This was the first time someone had noticed anything strange. "What is Madame discomfort by?" Wang Chong asked, choosing to move cautiously. "I'm not sure. I just feel that something isn't right, like I've lost something very important to me." Madame Wang placed a hand on her chest as she spoke. But halfway through, she couldn't help but laugh. "Why am I telling you this? He's already so grown up and about to have his own family, and he's even marrying the lady of the Su clan. This will bring honor to our family, and I should be happy." As Madame Wang said this, her brow slightly relaxed, but her concern and unease remained. "You know, it's strange." As Madame Wang spoke, she looked at Wang Chong. "I've never mentioned this to anyone, not even Fuer or Bayer, so why did I bring it up in front of you? For some reason, I feel some intimacy with you as if you're Chonger." As Madame Wang blurted out these words, she was stunned by what she was saying. Her brow quickly furrowed even deeper, as she had come across some befuddling riddle. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's heart was trembling. "Mother." Wang Chong's heart surged with indescribable warmth. The capital had experienced a massive shift, and everything seemed to be under the control of some invisible hand that had wiped away everyone's memories. Wang Chong had tried with his servants, maids, subordinates, and even the common folk of the capital, but none of them had remembered him. This was the first time someone had recognized him. His mother didn't know martial arts and had psychic energy far weaker than ordinary martial artists. But even though her memories had been wiped, she still remembered him. "Mother." Wang Chong's lips trembled as he almost blurted out this word. But at this moment, a voice exploded in the minds of Wang Chong and Madame Wang. "Ha! Human emotions. Even when you sensed that something was wrong, you still took the risk of seeking out your mother." Madame Wang was confused as to what was going on, but Wang Chong instantly paled. "Heaven!" Wang Chong's face turned grim. He was no stranger to this energy. It was none other than the one who had pulled him into that cruel world where his berserker syndrome had flared up. Wang Chong had not imagined that heaven would suddenly appear. Buzz! A silver barrier emerged and covered his mother. At the same time, Wang Chong quickly stood in front of his mother. Wang Chong looked up, and at a certain point deep in space-time, Wang Chong sensed a ripple of energy. The moment that powerful ripple of energy appeared, an enormous barrier covered the Wang family residence. Heaven had been waiting this whole time. He knew that Wang Chong would return to the Wang family residence, and he knew that Wang Chong would seek out his mother, so he had set up a trap. Wang Chong felt an intense danger. That familiar voice spoke again, but the words took him by surprise. Ha, you're wrong. I am not heaven. Heaven is far more capable than I am." The voice was confident and relaxed, but the words made Wang Chong's eyes twitch and his ears buzz. Not heaven. Someone with such powerful psychic energy, enough to pull him into an illusion without being noticed, wasn't heaven. He could tell that this person had much more psychic energy than him. Besides heaven, who else could be this powerful? While you might not have met me before, you shouldn't be unfamiliar with my name. Let me introduce myself. This one is Essence Supreme. For various reasons, I am different from ordinary humans and from the other Supremes. You might be more familiar with various avatars that walk the earth, but in essence, I am just a mental body. Right? I am the one that is able to revive any Supreme so long as their soul remains. The voice heartily laughed as they introduced themselves. Wang Chong instantly scowled. Wang Chong knew of the name, but in his heart, Wang Chong thought that Essence Supreme would essentially be like the others. Wang Chong had also seen the form of Essence Supreme in the memories of the men in black, but it seemed that he had deeply underestimated this Essence Supreme who had always remained in the background. He had been the architect behind the reincarnation system of the Celestial God Organization, so the man himself had to be even more troublesome than he had imagined. Haha, Wang Chong, you've truly drawn my curiosity. You are the first person to have ruined our purification plan, and you even killed Genesis Supreme. But it is time for it all to end. Immense waves of psychic energy slammed into Wang Chong's mind. Essence Supreme softly chuckled, seemingly assured and confident in their control of the situation. Wang Chong said nothing, his expression grave as his entire body tensed, ready to attack at any time. Essence Supreme was far too calm, seemingly assured that they could kill him, that he had no hope of escaping. Wang Chong had an extremely bad feeling. Right, didn't you want to see heaven? As a farewell gift, I will let you meet him. Great One, the child of destruction has appeared. Essence Supreme softly chuckled as they spoke into the depths of space-time, seemingly requesting the presence of an even higher existence. Essence Supreme's voice was brimming with respect, like a subject paying respects to their sovereign. A few moments later, Wang Chong felt the void above him shatter, and an enormous energy as brilliant as the rising sun appeared above the Wang family residence, exuding boundless flames. As that energy appeared, a cold and majestic voice rang out. Wang Chong, I have been looking for you for some time. It is time for everything to end. Moreover, in that dazzling and all-encompassing light, Wang Chong sensed two familiar energies. Doomsday insignias. Wang Chong suddenly understood. Heaven had obtained Origin Supreme's Doomsday insignia, and with the one from the Origin Immortal Palace, he now had two. While this wasn't enough to release the seals around him, Heaven could still use more power than before. This also meant that the avatar Heaven had created would also be stronger. Rumble. As the voice exploded, a torrent of destructive energy gushed down from the heavens. Crimson flames as viscous as water engulfed the Wang family residence, and it seemed like the end of days had come. Heaven's avatar had unleashed a destructive attack after just a few words. The Wang family residence was on the verge of annihilation, a tiny raft in the middle of a storm. Crisis, an intense sense of danger. This was the first time Wang Chong was directly taking an attack from Heaven. He was now at the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm and had an understanding of spacetime that far surpassed the vast majority of experts. Even the Supremes could not compare to Wang Chong in some aspects. But when facing Heaven's terrifying attack, Wang Chong realized just how vast the chasm was. The mastery of spacetime, martial arts, and laws that Heaven had displayed in this one attack far surpassed Wang Chong. Heaven's actual body was still sealed, but the experience and skills built up over countless eons would not be weakened just because he was sealed. Wang Chong could tell that an unbelievable number of laws fused with spacetime energy had been merged into the flames. Piercing screams came from various parts of the estate. All of them could sense the destructive energy coming from above, and a maid looked up with fearful eyes. This attack exerted an immense pressure even before it made impact. At this moment, all of the lives in the residence depended on Wang Chong. Now is the moment. Life hung by a single thread, and as Heaven attacked, Wang Chong took action. With an explosion of thunder and a howl of wind, a dark golden halo erupted from beneath Wang Chong's feet. This wasn't Wang Chong's first time using a halo of spacetime, but this one was different from all the others. In less time than it took to blink, the halo of spacetime became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. By the end, tens of thousands of halos of spacetime had appeared around the Wang family residence. Each maid and servant had a halo of space-time under their feet, and once all this was done, with a resounding metallic clatter, an enormous halo of space-time covered the entire estate. Rumble. Wang Chong's eyes gleamed with a harsh light. As his body erupted with power, all members of the Wang family disappeared together with the estate. Behind Wang Chong's head, an enormous, gleaming halo appeared. At that moment, Wang Chong had taken the entire estate and all the people within it into the Halo Divine Tool. The lives of the entire Wang family were on the line, and he could not make any mistakes. "Come on, let's fight," Wang Chong angrily bellowed to the heavens. Rumble. The halo behind Wang Chong's head instantly grew several times larger as stellar energy poured into it, growing to the size of the entire Wang family residence. Amidst the dazzling red light, clang! A golden sword that was around 100 feet long emerged. The Sword of God. The Halo Divine Tool's powerful offensive form, stimulated by Wang Chong's stellar energy, had finally emerged. However, bolstered by Wang Chong's immense stellar energy, the Sword of God was far more powerful and intimidating than at any time before. Not even when Genesis Supreme had used the Sword of God had it been this powerful. In the intervening time, Wang Chong had been constantly researching this divine tool, so this sword was no longer restricted to the power of the divine tool. Wang Chong had merged it with the art of God and demon obliteration, the great yin-yang heaven creation art, and the law energy of spacetime. Wang Chong had even merged into it the sage emperor's son of heaven's sword. This was what had created the powerful, upgraded Sword of God. As this sword emerged, the fabric of space for the surrounding several hundred feet trembled as if it was unable to endure this power. The God-executing sword. Wang Chong let out a thunderous bellow, and that blazing golden sword sliced through space and toward that attack descending from the heavens. The world seemed to fall silent for a moment, even time seeming to stop. The depths of spacetime even trembled upon facing Wang Chong's sword. Impossible! Essence Supreme, in his mental form, couldn't help but be stunned by this sight. For a mortal human to be able to use a divine tool to this level was truly astonishing. Even many of the Supremes would seem inferior to this human. It's a pity that he's still no match. Wang Chong was truly very strong, whether it was in power, skills, or talent. But he had no idea of the meaning of the word heaven. This was not something that could be explained through mere talent. In front of heaven, any talent, no matter how outstanding, was insignificant. In the depths of spacetime, a golden ball of light seemed to sigh, its light rippling for a moment. From the powerful psychic energy ripples it radiated, one could tell that this was Essence Supreme. It is useless, simply the light of an ant. Heaven's majestic voice rang out as if it was pronouncing a death sentence. Rumble. A moment later, the destructive torrent of red flames exploded with frightening power that slammed into Wang Chong's golden sword. This was the first time heaven had displayed his terrifying strength against Wang Chong. If Wang Chong's attack could be compared to a sturdy mountain, heaven's strength was an entire mountain range, and not even the sturdiest mountain could compare to an entire mountain range. Rumble. The two energies crashed together in the air. Crack. With a crack like shattering glass, the Halo Divine Tool behind Wang Chong's head suffered immense damage, and numerous fine cracks appeared in the dazzling red light. Whoosh! Wang Chong trembled and vomited blood, and his ruddy complexion instantly turned pale white. Too powerful. Wang Chong felt an immense shock. He had believed that no one could contend against him except for heaven's true self. But with this clash, Wang Chong truly understood how terrifying heaven was. Wang Chong had concentrated vast amounts of space-time law into the sword, but in the face of heaven's attack, these space-time energies instantly shattered. Yet things were far from over. Kaboom! An immense force hammered Wang Chong into the earth. The entirety of the capital shuddered, dust rocketing into the air. The ground at Wang Chong's location splintered apart in a spiderweb of cracks and began to collapse. This first direct clash had ended with Wang Chong's total defeat. It's over. Deep in spacetime, the golden ball of light that was Essence Supreme muttered, and then he said some mystifying words. It seems that he's not that person. Gods are gods and humans are humans. Wang Chong had probably heard this countless times, but he had no idea of its true meaning. Whether it was the tiger, deer, or goat immortals, the appearance of divine lords, or even the appearance of Genesis Supreme in the War of the Northeast, Wang Chong had overcome trial after trial and killed numerous peerless experts of the Celestial God Organization. These various victories had caused Wang Chong to wrongly believe that the Celestial God Organization was lacking in strength, that he could take on the Celestial God Organization all by himself. Wang Chong had no idea that the Celestial God Organization had never been an organization, but a single person. This person was heaven. The Celestial God Organization had been his creation, and even the 12 Supremes had been people he had saved from the destruction of various epochs. Quite a few of the Supremes had even had their power granted to them by heaven. It would be no exaggeration to say that heaven had single-handedly created the Celestial God Organization. If he was willing, he could create a second, a third, countless. Even if Wang Chong killed all the Supremes to the last man, so long as heaven still lived, he could create a second batch, a third batch, a fourth batch. The Celestial God Organization would forever exist. This was the difference between men and gods. Wang Chong didn't understand that everything he did was futile. At present, now that heaven had appeared, this farce would be brought to an end. Whether it was the child of destruction or the child of destiny, compared to heaven, they would always be ants. Accept your fate. Heaven's majestic voice came from on high. Wang Chong was truly very strong, but he was simply too young and didn't have enough time. Compared to the deceased Li Tai, Wang Chong was still lacking. This lack was not due to talent, but simply a problem of time. Boom! The world was flooded with red light as a searing pillar of energy descended from the depths of space-time toward Wang Chong. This attack was even more powerful than the first one. Wang Chong was injured and would be incapable of stopping it. Just when Wang Chong was about to be engulfed by the pillar, Supreme Buddha, a cold voice resounded, and dazzling Buddhist light erupted from the halo divine tool above Wang Chong. At the same time, Buddhist chants began to resound through the heavens. Tens of thousands of auspicious rays of light emerged from the Buddha, and in these rays of light were smaller Buddhas. These tens of thousands of small Buddhas circled around the giant Buddha, creating a world of Buddhas. This was the Supreme Buddha. Bang! The giant Buddha had a compassionate expression as it raised its right palm wrapped in Buddhist light upward to meet heaven's attack. Buzz! Essence Supreme, in his role as a spectator, was stunned by this sight. This is Origin Supreme's power? How? As a fellow Supreme, he was extremely familiar with Origin Supreme's power. But hadn't Essence Supreme already killed Origin Supreme? Why would his power be with Wang Chong? No, this could not be considered Wang Chong. A moment later, Essence Supreme realized that there was someone else within that halo divine tool above Wang Chong. This was Wang Chong's first divine embryo. Since the deaths of Firmament Supreme and Genesis Supreme, Wang Chong's divine embryo clones were no secret to the Celestial God Organization. On his journey to Sindhu, Wang Chong had obtained Origin Supreme's parting gift. This had not only consisted of his memories, but also the last of his energy and power. This was the Supreme Buddha. Wang Chong no longer needed Grotto Heaven energy at his level, so he had given this power to Divine Embryo 1. The Earth Divine Embryo possessed outstanding talent and had originally been only half a step from the Grotto Heaven realm. It only lacked a Grotto Heaven core, and now that it had Origin Supreme's core, Divine Embryo 1 had broken through that threshold and reached the Grotto Heaven realm. Moreover, Divine Embryo 1 was connected to Wang Chong, sharing his memories and experiences. Thus, it could immediately absorb everything about the Grotto Heaven realm that Wang Chong had comprehended. Thus, Wang Chong had his first Grotto Heaven realm clone. Both Essence Supreme and Heaven only knew that Wang Chong had reached the Grotto Heaven realm. They had no idea that one of his clones had managed to reach this level as well. The Grotto Heaven Divine Embryo's attack took them both by surprise. Rumble! In a flash of light, another figure appeared next to the Grotto Heaven Divine Embryo. Wang Chong's original body joined hands with the clone to try and fend off Heaven's attack. Open up! Wang Chong tensed up his entire body, mustering all the power he could as he joined Divine Embryo 1 in unleashing the strongest attack of his life. As expected, Origin Supreme really did manage to find you. Heaven's voice came from above, majestic and largely unperturbed. Alas, you're still a little lacking. A firefly is still a firefly. All your martial arts were passed down by us, so how could you possibly match us? Be destroyed, child of destruction. Heaven's terrifying power was like the blazing sun, flooding the world with light and making all things seem dim by comparison. A moment later, another kind of energy swelled up within Heaven's already powerful attack. As Wang Chong looked on, that red light suddenly became red and black, the two colors spinning around each other like yin-yang fish. The great yin-yang heaven creation art. How? Wang Chong was utterly shaken. He had reached the apex of the great yin-yang heaven creation art and was far too familiar with this first supreme art that he had learned. The power Heaven had used was undoubtedly the great yin-yang heaven creation art, but it seemed to be of an even higher level. Wang Chong had relied on his intelligence to improve the great yin-yang heaven creation art and fix its flaws. But what Heaven had used was the ultimate version of the art. Yin and yang were the heavens and earth. In essence, they were space-time. That red and black light filling the world contained so many dimensions that Wang Chong couldn't even count them all. One could say that Wang Chong had been pursuing it all this time but had never been able to reach it. But Heaven had easily pulled it off in front of Wang Chong. The annihilative energy produced when yin and yang collided against space and time was enough to horrify anyone. The winds howled as that terrifying energy flooded down. Wang Chong's heart sank to rock bottom. Heaven's strength was far more frightening than anyone could imagine. Even though his original body was sealed, his avatar could still unleash an overwhelming amount of energy. Wang Chong suddenly somewhat understood why Essence Supreme was merely watching from the sidelines. It was less out of respect for Heaven and more out of absolute confidence in Heaven's strength. Wang Chong's forehead creased as he felt the stifling scent of death assailing his nostrils. But it was too late for Wang Chong to do anything, even dodge, for Heaven and Essence Supreme had completely sealed off the area. Rumble. As this immense energy descended, space-time trembled. But just when it seemed like Wang Chong and his divine embryo one were about to be heavily injured, even killed by Heaven's attack, buzz, a powerful vibration came from beneath the Wang family residence, and a familiar voice rang out in Wang Chong's ears. Master, I'll help you. This energy had been hiding underground for a long time, and this sudden eruption of power was something that not even Essence Supreme's seal could withstand. Bzzz. A familiar figure wearing earthen yellow armor jumped out of the ground and in front of Wang Chong. Little Nightmare. Wang Chong's eyes widened. He had left Little Nightmare in the capital before heading off to Sindhu, and he had never imagined that it would come charging out of the ground. Wicked devil. You hurt Little Grass, and you hurt my master. I won't let you go. The moment Little Nightmare charged out, it made for Heaven's location. Its body was seething with a rare loathing. Wang Chong had never seen Little Nightmare like this before. This unending hatred took the form of thick black energy that erupted from Genesis Supreme's body. Bolstered by its hatred, the nightmare beast was more powerful and terrifying than ever before. Master, I'll cover you. Run. I've already lost one master. I won't lose a second. Explode. Little Nightmare's voice resounded through the world. At that moment, Little Nightmare detonated this grotto heaven realm body. And besides that, Little Nightmare also erupted all of its psychic energy. It's a nightmare beast. This terrifying, destructive storm of psychic energy made even Essence Supreme pale. Unlike the other Supremes, Essence Supreme was a purely psychic existence. Though he had many avatars, he used those avatars like one would use different sets of clothes. Essence Supreme was essentially a soul. Though the explosion of Little Nightmare's physical body couldn't harm him, that self-detonation of psychic energy was an immense threat to his psychic body. In terms of mental strength, the nightmare beast could be considered fully mature. Even Essence Supreme was not willing to directly take this sort of terrifying explosion. Boom! Chaotic energy mixed with psychic energy spread out through the area. The Wang family residence had been enclosed in a red barrier, but Little Nightmare's self-detonation immediately caused cracks to appear. A massive hole was quickly punched through the formerly sturdy domain. Bastard! Destroying my domain! Essence Supreme explosively bellowed in fury. Though he was a mental existence similar to the nightmare beast, he looked down on this sort of lower-class mental creature. He had slain countless of these nightmare beasts in a long-ago era, extracting their essence and refining them into pills to be used by Heaven and the 12 Supremes. To be forced into such a battered state by a single nightmare beast, even having his domain shattered with Heaven watching, was something he would not stand for. Myriad Formations Essence Ruler. Seal. That golden light that was Essence Supreme flashed, and an ancient ivory ruler appeared. There were many ancient golden inscriptions on this ruler, and its hallowed and divine form pulsed with energy. The ruler of Essence Supreme. This was Essence Supreme's personal ritual tool, the strongest product of a certain epoch. Essence Supreme sought to use his personal ritual tool to place an even larger seal over the area. Alas, Essence Supreme had underestimated Wang Chong's reaction speed. The moment Little Nightmare exploded and Essence Supreme took out his ruler, an enormous psychic energy penetrated through the crack in the domain and slammed into the golden ball of light that was Essence Supreme. The impact of Wang Chong's psychic energy made Essence Supreme slow down for a moment. Using this chance, Wang Chong and Divine Embryo 1 unleashed their strongest attacks. God Executing Sword. Supreme Buddha. Their two attacks, combined with Little Nightmare's self-detonation, created a terrifying power. This power swept through the world and made all things shudder. But even against this sort of attack, all that came in reply was a calm and unshakable voice. It's useless, still not enough. As that grandiose voice spoke, a pressure as heavy as Mount Tai pressed down. Heaven's avatar was absurdly powerful. Even the three of them working together were still no match for him. Is that so? Heaven, take this. Just when the attacks were about to collide, when the lives of Wang Chong and the several hundred people in the Wang family residence were on the line, a dark golden halo of spacetime appeared, and a resplendent, golden short halberd covered in inscriptions appeared amidst Heaven's stellar energy. Firmament Supreme's halberd. This was Firmament Supreme's personal ritual tool which Wang Chong had taken from him at the Caspian Sea, and it was now being used against Heaven. As Firmament Supreme's personal ritual tool, the golden short halberd had a powerful piercing attribute. This ritual tool shouldn't have been enough to deal with Heaven, but at this crucial time when Wang Chong, Divine Embryo 1, and Little Nightmare were all working together, it played a key role. Explode! As the golden short halberd pierced through Heaven's stellar energy, Wang Chong chose to detonate it. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the golden short halberd exploded into countless pieces of shrapnel. The power of the ritual tool turned into a destructive burst of energy within Heaven's attack. Bang! The impact of Heaven's energy against the combined attack of Wang Chong's group, coupled with the golden short halberd's explosion, finally created a tiny sliver of disorder in Heaven's seemingly impregnable aura. A cry of alarm came from the depths of spacetime. It appeared that even Heaven had been taken aback by Wang Chong's sudden attack. But Wang Chong had no time to worry about such things. If Wang Chong had been willing, he would have even been able to glimpse Heaven's true face. Throughout this battle, the two parties had been clashing purely through energy, and various dimensional barriers between them prevented Wang Chong from seeing Heaven's true body. And Wang Chong wanted nothing more than to see what the Sage Emperor's greatest foe really looked like. But Wang Chong simply didn't have the time. Let's go! Wang Chong unleashed a silvery light that swept up Divine Embryo 1. At the same time, he opened his hand, and a dark golden halo of spacetime appeared around Little Nightmare's remains. In order to resist Heaven and protect Wang Chong, Little Nightmare had unleashed all of its power. Wang Chong could sense that it was rapidly weakening, a guttering candle in the wind. The detonation of a soul was a great taboo for any martial artist, for self-detonation meant certain death. Little Nightmare, hold on. No matter what, I won't let you die. Wang Chong clenched his teeth, and with a flick of his finger, he collected the remnants of Little Nightmare's soul and sealed them within the halo of spacetime.